With dust trailing and the wind behind him, Tahsenta rode into Caprock Crossing, worry etched across his face. His sister Sani and Johanna Mercer had both fallen ill. Sani had sent him to find Laura Jennings, the only person in town with any medical training. Laura had learned from Sani, a skilled medicine woman and one of the few Comanche who still remained in the territory. When Dr. Colbert left for a bigger city, Laura found an old medical book on his desk with a note tucked inside. "For you, Laura. Follow your dreams." The first person Tahsenta saw was Eli, sitting on the steps of the general store. He'd come earlier hoping to speak with Laura, but she had turned him away. Now he sat there, turning his hat in his hands, wondering how to make things right. Tahsenta approached quickly, startling him. "I'm looking for a woman named Laura Jennings. Where might I find her? It's urgent." Eli's reporter instinct was to ask questions, but he wasn't about to press this tall, muscular Indian. "She's inside," Eli said. Without a word, Tahsenta moved to the door, his voice steady but urgent. "Sani needs you. Bring medicine." Laura turned to Silas. "I'm not sure when I can return, but they need me. I must go." She ran to her room at the boarding house and gathered her small medical bag, the one Sani had made for her. Eli watched as she rode away, clutching Tahsenta's waist as they disappeared down the dusty road. At the ranch, Boone had watched over Sani as she tended Johanna, even bringing in another bed so she could stay close. Now Sani was weak and delirious. Laura hurried upstairs, assessing both patients quickly. Johanna lay pale and feverish, her breathing ragged. Sani, coughing deeply, tried to speak but could barely whisper, her lips tinged with blue. Johanna explained that Sani had fallen ill after caring for her, brewing lung leaf tea and rubbing oil on her chest until she was too sick to stand. Laura remembered a passage from her medical book about taking a pulse. She had tried it on herself, but never on someone else. She reached for Johanna's arm, noting that the beat was slower than her own. Both women burned with fever and struggled against a deep, wet cough. Laura recognized the signs. Lung fever, the same illness that had once taken her little brother. Later, she would learn the medical term, pneumonia. From the next room, Boone coughed harshly. The weight of responsibility pressed on Laura. She closed her eyes briefly and whispered a prayer for strength and guidance. She remembered her mother opening the window and sending her outside when her brother was sick. The medical book she studied each night spoke of washing hands and covering the mouth when patients were contagious. Sani had taught her about herbs and using plants, the two worlds of knowledge. One learned from a book, the other from the earth, now rested in her hands. "I will pass this test," she whispered to herself, "but there is much to do." She sent Boone outside to the porch for fresh air. Then, going to the kitchen, she washed her hands and tied a kerchief around her face to cover her nose and mouth. Turning to Tahsenta, she said, "Go back to town. Find the saloon and ask for Ruby. Tell her I need her help and bring her back to the ranch." Laura found a pot and added the fuzzy herbs from her bag, then poured in water and set it to simmer. She gathered several flannel towels and carried the pot upstairs. Dipping one towel into the water, she wrung it out and laid it across Sani's chest, encouraging her to sip from the cup nearby. She took another towel, dipped it again, and asked Johanna to hold it to her mouth, breathing the warm vapors while Laura placed another on her chest. She pressed a cool compress to Sani's forehead, wiping away the beads of sweat. Sani held her ribs when she coughed but said nothing of the pain. Laura returned with a cup of tea made from willow bark to ease it. Tahsenta returned with Ruby, and Laura met them at the door. Skipping greetings, she said, "I need your help, but you have to know, you could get sick, even die. I'll do my best to protect you." Boone raised his brows, not realizing how serious things had become. Ruby, worried but steady, gave a small smile. "You are my only friend. Of course I'll help." "Open the windows," Laura instructed. "We all need sunlight and air." "Wash your hands first," she added. "We'll all need to drink peppermint tea. I left the leaves in the kitchen. Don't come upstairs. I'll come for mine. Take one to Boone. He's been coughing too. When Ruby returned with the tea, Boone surprised her with a folded kerchief. I saw Laura wears one, he said. You probably should too. Ruby smiled, feeling that rare, warm sense of being cared for. Laura came downstairs with a bundle of linens. Wash these and hang them out to dry, she said. Let the wind help us. She looked out the window and saw Tahsenta training a horse in the corral. Calm, patient, and gentle. For a moment she smiled, taking comfort in the steadiness of his movements. Then Johanna's cough pulled her back to the task at hand. I'm not a doctor, Johanna, Laura said softly, but I've seen lung fever before. I know your ribs hurt, but I need to help clear your lungs. Johanna nodded weakly. Laura made a fist, thumb turned outward, and began firm, rhythmic strikes across Johanna's back. Soon Johanna coughed hard, bringing up the congestion that had trapped her breath for days. That evening, Sani was no better. Laura stepped outside to find Tahsenta near the barn, the lamplight catching the strain on his face. She's fading, Laura said quietly. I've done everything I know. Tahsenta thought for a moment before speaking. In my people's way, he said, the sweat lodge can draw sickness out. The heat and steam open the lungs. Laura considered it. Could we make something like that here? He nodded once, then disappeared into the shadows. When he returned, he carried a soft hide draped over one shoulder. This will do, he said. Inside, Laura arranged chairs around Sani's bed where she lay on her side. She draped the soft hide over the tall chair backs, forming a small tent. Then she prepared steaming herbs, mullein, peppermint, and a touch of pine, and asked Ruby to heat the water. The room filled with the scent of earth and mint. Laura slipped the pot beneath the tent and watched the steam curl through the air. When she looked up, Ruby was there with clean sheets. Laura shook her head at her for coming upstairs, but was grateful for the help. Together they changed Johanna's bedding, sponged her face, and tucked her back in. Make broth for them both, Laura said, and tell Boone Johanna's looking better. Laura knelt beside Sani's bed. Tell me what to do, she whispered. I need your help. Closing her eyes, she prayed again for guidance. When she opened them, Tahsenta stood quietly in the doorway, watching over them, grateful for Laura's courage. Together, Laura and Tahsenta lifted the hide away and replaced the sheets. Laura spooned broth between Sani's lips until a faint color returned to her face. Tahsenta stepped outside to speak with Ruby while Laura sponged Sani's skin with cool water. The fever broke before dawn. Ruby appeared again at the door. Tahsenta had me prepare something for you to eat, she said softly, smiling. I'll sit with them while you have a bite. Laura smiled wearily, gratitude in her eyes. Thank you, Ruby. She glanced toward the window where the first light of morning was breaking. For the first time in days, she felt hope rising with the sun. Boone came up with a kerchief in place, his eyes twinkling as he saw Johanna awake, sitting up and breathing easier. He told her all that Laura had done. She may as well be a nurse, the way she took care of y'all. No one noticed the faint smile that crept onto Sani's lips. Boone turned to Ruby and reached for her hand. This girl's been doing laundry, making tea and broth, and keeping me company, he said. She's been a big help. And she came in knowing she might catch the fever. Ruby blushed, touched by his kindness. Boone's tone held that rare mix of pride and protectiveness, a man who saw more than a helper but a girl who needed a chance. She smiled shyly and said to Johanna, Your pa is quite the storyteller. Not sure what's true and what's not. Then quieter, she wondered what her own pa might have been like. Laura cared for the girls through the day, both seeming to grow stronger with each hour. That night she held Sani's hand while she slept and spoke softly about her dreams, medical school, helping the sick, and maybe one day meeting someone who shared her purpose. But if I can't, she whispered, I'll be all right. She drifted off beside Sani, her head resting on the edge of the bed. When the sun began to warm the room, Laura woke to find Sani smiling. Thank you, Sani whispered. I know you saved my life. Later that morning, Laura asked Boone if he could have someone bring the wagon around so she and Ruby could return to town. Boone looked over at Ruby, who didn't seem eager to leave. "Well, Ruby," he said, "Johanna and I have been talking. She could use some help around here, and somebody to talk to. We'd like to offer you a place to stay on, cooking for us and the cowboys." Ruby's eyes widened, then filled with tears. She turned to Laura. "What do you think?" Laura smiled, happy for her friend. "I think it's a wonderful idea." Boone nodded, the corners of his mouth lifting. "In a few days, when Johanna feels better, we'll go to town, get your things, and stop by the store to pick up some dresses for you girls." They clasped hands and shared excitement. Ruby had found a family. If you enjoyed this story, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe. Join us for Part 3, another tale from Caprock Crossing.